Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's story is probably the hardest one I've ever had to share. It's about love, betrayal, and how my entire world fell apart the night before what should have been the happiest day of my life. Let me take you back to where it all began. I'm James, a 28-year-old software engineer at a tech startup in the city. You know the type: decent salary, comfortable life, maybe carrying a few extra pounds from too many late-night coding sessions. I'd had my share of rejections in the dating world. Some girls had literally laughed in my face when I asked them out, others gave me the classic, "You're such a nice guy, but..." speech. It's the kind of stuff that builds up over time, makes you doubt yourself. Then I met Sarah at our company's annual party at the Golden Bay Resort. When I say she was beautiful, I mean the kind of beautiful that makes you forget how to form basic sentences. She had this honey blonde hair that caught the light just right, and when she smiled, it lit up the whole room. I kept noticing her glancing in my direction throughout the evening. Now, let me tell you something: when you've spent most of your life being the nice guy that girls aren't interested in, you develop this sixth sense for when someone's looking at you because they're interested versus when they're looking at you because they're judging you. This felt different. After a couple of drinks for courage, I walked over to her. I know, bold move for someone who usually sticks to the corners at parties. I said something super smooth like, "I've noticed you looking my way." Real Shakespeare stuff, right? But instead of the polite rejection I was expecting, she smiled, like genuinely smiled, and said, "I was wondering how long it would take you to come over." We talked for hours that night. Not the superficial party chat about weather and work, but real conversation. Sarah had just graduated from business school and was looking for her first corporate job. She was brilliant, could talk about anything from market analysis to classic literature. When she laughed at my terrible tech jokes, it wasn't that polite laugh people give when they're being nice. It was real. I called her the next day. Yeah, I know all about the wait 3 days rule, but I've never been good at playing those games. We met for lunch, and one date turned into 2, then 3, then regular coffee meetings that turned into dinner conversations that seemed to end too quickly. What really got me about Sarah wasn't just her looks. She was ambitious, had these big dreams about her corporate career. She could discuss complex business strategies with the same enthusiasm I had for coding. It was refreshing to meet someone who actually seemed interested in my work instead of just nodding politely when I talked about programming. The first red flag showed up about 3 months into our relationship, but of course I was too love-struck to see it for what it was. Sarah was struggling with her living situation. Her roommate kept having her boyfriend over, and in their small one-bedroom apartment, it was getting uncomfortable. She mentioned that her parents had made it clear they wouldn't support her financially after graduation. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly she set it up. She didn't ask to move in with me, she just expressed her frustration in a way that made me want to offer. And I did. I had this spacious one-bedroom apartment, decent salary, and I was head over heels for her. Why wouldn't I want to help? Here's something I've learned since then: when someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them the first time. But when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Sarah moved in within a week. No hesitation, no "are you sure about this?" discussion. She just accepted. At the time, I thought it meant she was as sure about us as I was. Now I understand it meant something very different. You guys won't believe how perfect everything seemed at first. Sarah turned out to be an amazing housekeeper, kept our apartment spotless, cooked these incredible meals, and honestly, our physical chemistry was off the charts. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Let me tell you about our daily routine. I was working this hybrid schedule, 60% remote, 40% in office. It meant we got to spend a lot of time together. Every morning, she'd make coffee while I checked my emails. We'd have breakfast together, talk about our plans for the day. When I worked from home, she'd bring me lunch at my desk, give me a kiss, ask about my projects. Looking back, it's almost scary how perfectly she played the role of the devoted girlfriend. And that's exactly what it was, a role. But we'll get to that. Early in our relationship, Sarah told me this story about her college ex-boyfriend, Michael. According to her, he was this controlling, manipulative guy who'd made her life miserable. She said it had taken her months to recover from that relationship. Being the knight in shining armor I thought I promised to be different. I told her I'd never control her or hurt her. That's when I suggested something that would later come back to bite me. I proposed we always tell each other where we were going and who we were with. You know, to show her how transparent and trustworthy I could be. Sarah loved the idea. Of course she did, it gave her the perfect cover. When you're voluntarily telling someone your whereabouts, who would suspect you're lying? Now enter Rachel, Sarah's best friend from college. This is where things start getting interesting. Rachel worked as a retail store manager and lived with her 2 sisters. She was different from Sarah, more straightforward, less polished. She offered Sarah a job at her store, but Sarah turned it down. Said she was holding out for a corporate position. I respected that. I mean, she had a business degree, why shouldn't she aim high? Rachel became a regular at our place. She and Sarah had this whole best friends forever vibe going on. But sometimes I'd catch these weird looks from Rachel. Like she wanted to say something but couldn't. One time, when Sarah was in the kitchen making snacks, Rachel hit me with this cryptic comment. James, Sarah isn't exactly who you think she is. I played dumb, asked her what she meant, but she just said I'd figure it out eventually. She was drunk at the time, so I brushed it off. Big mistake. Huge. Here's something wild. Sarah never contributed to our expenses. Not a penny. I was paying for everything: rent, utilities, groceries, her shopping trips. Even her job hunting expenses. But I didn't mind because I was investing in our future. That's what I told myself anyway. Things were going so well that I started thinking about marriage. I mean, why not? I had a stable job, a beautiful girlfriend who seemed to adore me, and we lived together harmoniously. But I wanted to wait until Sarah found her dream job. I wanted her to establish her career first. Then came the dinner where everything shifted. We were celebrating my promotion at this fancy restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and way too many forks. Out of nowhere, Sarah looks at me and says, "What do you say if we get married?" I almost choked on my wine. Not because I hadn't thought about it, I had actually already bought a ring. It was hidden in my closet, waiting for the right moment. I was planning this whole elaborate proposal for after she landed a job. But Sarah? Well, Sarah had other plans. A week later, she found the ring while organizing our closet. To avoid any awkward assumptions, I had to propose earlier than planned. Looking back, I realized she probably went searching for it after dropping that marriage hint at dinner. Classic Sarah move, manipulating situations while making it seem like coincidence. But guys, you haven't heard the craziest part yet. When Sarah showed Rachel her engagement ring, Rachel's reaction was, let's just say it wasn't what you'd expect from a best friend. So about Rachel's reaction to our engagement, it wasn't the typical excited squealing you'd expect from a best friend. Instead, she looked like someone had just told her terrible news. Are you being serious? That's what she said. Not, congratulations, not, I'm so happy for you, but, are you being serious? She picked up Sarah's hand to look at the ring, and I swear, the smile she gave me afterward was so forced it could have cracked her face. At the time, I thought maybe she was jealous. You know how some people get when their best friend gets engaged before them. But no, Rachel knew exactly what was going on. She just couldn't tell me directly. Let me tell you about the wedding planning phase, because this is where things get really interesting. Sarah wanted this massive, extravagant wedding. We're talking about 300 guests, designer wedding dress, fancy venue, the works. Meanwhile, I'm looking at our budget, thinking about our future. We'd need a bigger apartment if we wanted kids, which I did, and there were other expenses to consider. But here's the thing about Sarah. She had this way of making her wants seem completely reasonable. Don't you want our wedding to be perfect? Don't you want everyone to see how happy we are? Don't you want me to have my dream wedding? It was like saying no to any of these questions would make me the bad guy. Then, miracle of miracles, Sarah finally got a job 2 months before the wedding. You'd think this would help with the wedding expenses, right? Wrong. Every single penny she earned went straight to her wedding dress, shoes, accessories, and her bridesmaids' dresses. Meanwhile, I'm paying for the venue, catering, flowers, photographer, everything else. Now get this, 2 weeks before the wedding, Rachel started texting me. Like a lot. Good morning texts, random check-ins, updates about wedding shopping with Sarah. But whenever she came to our place, she acted totally normal around Sarah. It was weird enough that I had to tell her to stop. At this point, you might be wondering, James, how did you not see what was happening? Well, let me tell you about the power of denial. When you've invested so much time, money, and emotion into a relationship, your brain starts working overtime to justify things that don't make sense. Like how Sarah started going to the gym every evening. She said she wanted to look perfect in her wedding dress. Reasonable, right? Or how she needed extra money for wedding emergencies that she never really explained. Or how she'd say she was with Rachel when Rachel was actually working late at the store. The wedding was set to be at the same hotel where we first met, the Golden Bay Resort. Romantic, right? Everything was ready. The venue was decorated, the cake was ordered, the guests were arriving. The night before the wedding, we were staying in separate rooms, following tradition. I was at the hotel bar with some friends, having a few drinks to calm my pre-wedding nerves. That's when my phone started buzzing. Rachel's name popped up on the screen. Now, remember how I told her to stop texting me? Well, she was calling this time. James, there's something you need to see. Room 1542. Now. I almost ignored it. I mean, it's the night before my wedding, I'm with my friends, and my fiancé's best friend is calling me to come to a hotel room? But then she said two words that made my blood run cold. It's Michael. Michael. The supposedly abusive ex-boyfriend. The one Sarah claimed to be terrified of. The one she said she was so glad to be rid of. That Michael. I took one of my friends with me, thank God I did, and headed up to the 15th floor. The elevator ride felt like it took hours. Each floor number lighting up was like a countdown to something I knew I didn't want to see. When I got to the 15th floor, Rachel was standing outside room 1542, looking like she was about to be sick. James, she said, her voice shaking, I'm so sorry. I tried to tell you so many times. You know that moment in movies where everything goes into slow motion? That's exactly what happened when I reached for that door handle. The carpet seemed to sway under my feet. The hallway lights felt too bright. Even the air felt thick, like I was trying to breathe underwater. What I saw when I opened that door? Guys, I wouldn't wish that feeling on my worst enemy. Sarah was there with Michael in a situation that left zero room for interpretation. The worst part? When she saw me, her first reaction wasn't guilt or shame. It was anger. Anger at being caught. She scrambled to cover herself with the sheets, but Michael just lay there with this smug look on his face. Like he'd won something. And I guess in his mind he had. That's when the screaming started. Sarah wasn't yelling apologies or explanations. No, she was screaming at Rachel. Why would you do this to me? My life was going perfectly. You ruined everything. Rachel fired back with the truth bomb of the century. I told you he deserved better. I told you to break it off with Michael months ago, but you wanted to eat your cake and have it too. I didn't stay to hear more. I just turned and walked away. My friend had to guide me back to the elevator because honestly I couldn't see straight. The tears were coming, but I refused to let them fall. Not there. Not then. Back in my room, I did something I'd never done before. I drank until I couldn't feel anything. My phone was blowing up with messages and calls, but I couldn't deal with any of it. How do you process finding out that your entire relationship was a lie? But wait, it gets better. The next morning, what was supposed to be my wedding day, I opened my door to find Sarah standing there in her wedding dress. Full makeup, hair done, looking like a bridal magazine cover. And you know what she said? James, why aren't you dressed? The ceremony starts in 3 hours. I lost it. I actually laughed. Like full-on hysterical laughter. Here was this woman who I'd caught cheating just hours before, standing at my door acting like nothing had happened. Like we were just going to go ahead with the wedding anyway. When I told her I was calling everything off, her true colors finally came out. She looked me dead in the eye and said, and I'll never forget these words, do you think calling off our wedding will help you find a better woman? No woman in her right mind would want to be with an overweight man like you. You should consider yourself lucky to marry someone like me. That's when it hit me. All those times she'd said she loved me for who I was? All those morning coffees and lunch deliveries and sweet gestures? Performance. I wasn't her love story, I was her backup plan. Her safety net. Her ATM. My friend called the venue to cancel while I locked myself in my room. Outside, I could hear the chaos unfolding. Sarah's parents demanding explanations. My mom crying. Wedding guests arriving only to be turned away. Sarah trying to play the victim, actually pretending to faint when people asked what happened. I sent a quick message to our wedding party group chat. Wedding's off. Found Sarah with another man last night. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Then I turned off my phone, packed my essentials, and left the hotel through a side entrance. But here's where it gets even crazier. The story doesn't end there. What happened in the weeks after? Well, that's when I learned the full extent of Sarah's deception. I spent a week completely off the grid. Turned off my phone, took emergency leave from work, and just existed. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were hundreds of missed calls and messages. But the ones that caught my eye were from an unknown number. It was Sarah. She wanted to meet, said she had something important to tell me. Against my better judgment and my friend's advice, I agreed to meet her at a cafe far from our usual spots. Guys, let me paint this picture for you. The Sarah who walked into that cafe was completely different from the woman who'd shown up at my hotel room in her wedding dress. Her hair was a mess, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes. But you know what hadn't changed? That attitude. She started the conversation by blaming me. According to her, this whole thing was my fault because I was always working and didn't give her the attention she needed. Remember how I told you I worked 60% from home specifically so we could spend more time together? Yeah, apparently that wasn't enough. Then she dropped this bomb. she admitted she'd been seeing Michael the entire time we were together. Those daily gym sessions? She was meeting him. The time she said she was with Rachel? She was with him. The extra money she kept asking for? Going straight to Michael. But wait, it gets better. Through Rachel, I learned that every expensive gift Sarah claimed to buy for herself with her new job money, she was buying them for Michael. The wedding expenses she said she needed to cover? Some of that money went to him too. Here's the kicker. Just days before showing me the engagement ring, Sarah had told Rachel she wanted to settle down with Michael. That's why Rachel looked so shocked when Sarah showed her my ring. It wasn't just the engagement that surprised her, it was Sarah's audacity. I thought that was the end of it. But no, Sarah had one more card to play. A week after our cafe meeting, she started calling me from different numbers. When I finally picked up, she hit me with it. "I'm pregnant with your baby, James." I actually laughed out loud. Want to know why? Because by this point, Rachel had told me everything. Michael had dumped Sarah when she told him about the pregnancy. So guess who she tried to pin it on? That's right, me. The final scene in this drama played out at my house. Sarah showed up unannounced one day when Rachel was there checking on me. She completely lost it. Started screaming about how Rachel had ruined her life, how she'd betrayed their friendship. Then she accused Rachel and me of having an affair, rich coming from her, right? I had to call the police. Filed a restraining order the next day. Through mutual friends, I learned that Sarah and Michael had been planning to use our wedding gift money to put a down payment on an apartment together. They had it all planned out, take the money and run. You want to know the most twisted part? Sarah and Michael's relationship wasn't even some great love story. After all this drama, he ended up dumping her for someone else. Karma, I guess. Rachel eventually told me why she waited so long to expose everything. She tried to warn Sarah multiple times to either end things with Michael or break up with me. Sarah would always promise to do it, then turn around and manipulate the situation even more. 6 months have passed since that night, and let me tell you about the aftermath and what I've learned from all this. First, let's talk about the financial damage. The wedding venue wouldn't refund our deposit. The caterers, florists, photographers, all that money was gone. But you know what? I consider it a small price to pay. Because if that wedding had happened, the cost would have been much higher, not just financially but emotionally. After everything came out, Sarah's parents actually reached out to me. They were devastated when they learned the truth. Her mom cried and apologized for raising a daughter who could do something like this. I told them they weren't responsible for their adult daughter's choices. The hardest part wasn't even the betrayal, it was realizing that everything I thought I knew about our relationship was fake. Those morning coffees? Part of her act. Those sweet text messages? Sent while she was probably with Michael. Those "I love yous"? Empty words. You know what really got to me? Finding out that Sarah used to laugh about me with Michael. She'd send him pictures of the gifts I bought her, joke about how easy it was to manipulate the fat tech guy. Yeah, that stung. But it also opened my eyes. Remember how I told you about growing up as the nice guy who always got rejected? Well, that insecurity made me the perfect target. I was so grateful for Sarah's attention that I ignored every red flag. When she moved in too quickly, I called it trust. When she wouldn't contribute financially, I called it support. When she pushed for an expensive wedding, I called it love. But here's what I've learned: real love doesn't need constant proving. Real love doesn't drain your bank account. Real love doesn't make you feel lucky to be chosen. After the dust settled, I did some serious work on myself. Not because Sarah was right about my weight, but because I needed to rebuild my self-worth. I started therapy, hit the gym, a real one this time, not a cover for cheating, and focused on my career. Remember the promotion I got before all this happened? Well, I threw myself into work, developed some new software solutions, and guess what? I just started my own consulting business on the side. Turns out when you're not spending all your money on someone else's secret life, you can invest in your own dreams. Rachel and I are still friends. Just friends, and before anyone asks in the comments, no, we're not secretly dating. She actually set me up with her cousin last month. It didn't work out romantically, but it was nice to know I could still connect with someone without automatically suspecting them of lying. Last week, I finally cleared out the last of Sarah's things from my apartment. Found the wedding ring in the back of my drawer. You know what I did? I sold it and donated the money to a charity that helps people recover from financial abuse. Seemed fitting. Sarah tried to reach out again recently. Sent this long message about how she made a mistake and never meant to hurt me. Said she's changed, grown, learned her lesson. I didn't respond. Some chapters are better left closed. The weird thing is, I'm actually grateful for what happened. Not for the betrayal itself, but for what it taught me. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I learned that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. And most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. To everyone out there who's been through something similar, it gets better. I know it sounds cliché, but it's true. The pain doesn't go away completely, but it changes. It becomes a lesson instead of a burden. And to those who might be seeing red flags in their own relationships but choosing to ignore them, don't. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't wait for a dramatic wedding eve revelation to make a change. You know what's funny? People keep asking me if I miss Sarah. The truth is, I don't miss her, I miss who I thought she was. That's the thing about manipulation. You fall in love with an illusion, a carefully crafted character in someone else's play. Let me share some red flags I missed so maybe you guys can avoid similar situations. First, watch how someone treats service workers, how they talk about their exes, and how they handle money. Sarah was always sweet to my face but rude to waiters. She painted all her exes as villains, except for Michael apparently, and she was completely irresponsible with money, not just hers but mine too. Second, pay attention to how quickly someone wants to escalate the relationship. Sarah moved in with me after just 3 months. She pushed for marriage before establishing her own career. When someone's rushing, ask yourself why. Third, be wary of people who make you feel lucky to have them. Real love builds you up. It doesn't remind you of your insecurities. Sarah used my weight as a weapon when she was caught. That says everything about her character and nothing about my worth. Now let me tell you where I am today. I've lost 30 pounds, not because Sarah said I should, but because I wanted to be healthier for myself. My consulting business is taking off. Last month, I even bought a new apartment, one without any memories of Sarah. Rachel's still around, still one of my closest friends. Some people think we should date, but we both know better. Some friendships are too valuable to risk. Besides, she's engaged now to a great guy who actually appreciates her honesty, the same honesty that saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. Here's something I haven't told anyone until now. I kept a journal during the whole relationship. Reading it back recently was eye-opening. I could see how my writing changed over time, how I went from confident to constantly justifying Sarah's behavior. That's what manipulation does. It changes your reality so slowly you don't notice until someone shows you the truth. Last month, I ran into Michael at a coffee shop. Want to know something crazy? He actually tried to apologize. Said Sarah had manipulated him too, claimed she was single when they got back together, told him I was just her roommate who had a crush on her. I don't know if that's true, and honestly, I don't care anymore. Their drama isn't my story anymore. Speaking of stories, Sarah's latest one is that she's found God and is on a journey of spiritual transformation. She's been posting about forgiveness and second chances on social media. A mutual friend told me she's been trying to position herself as the victim in all this, claiming she was young and confused and pressured by societal expectations. Whatever helps her sleep at night, I guess. You want to know the biggest lesson I learned from all this? It's that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about giving yourself permission to move on. I've forgiven Sarah not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. The wedding ring that was supposed to symbolize our future? I sold it and used the money to fund my first business project. Seems fitting, turning a symbol of deception into a foundation for honest success. To wrap this up, yes, what happened was painful. Yes, it changed how I view relationships. But it also made me stronger, wiser, and more aware of my own worth. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to the best version of ourselves. Thanks for listening to my story, guys. Hit like if this helped you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and leave a comment if you've ever experienced something similar. Remember, it's better to be alone than to be with someone who makes you feel alone. Stay strong out there.